Serving in the role of a manager is difficult in any field, and the field of infant and early childhood education is no different. In IECMH organizations, ensuring equity and quality services are being provided by a group of people should be priority of any successful manager. However, how does a manager effectively lead a team that might vary different from one or another, or even the populations they interact with? Some of the multitude of hurdles to goal achievement might include an incongruence of passion, program procedures, ineffective caregiver interactions, or even a lack of professional development on our end. All experience levels of managers and team leads, from aspiring to retired, can benefit from a robust discussion of equitable services in an often not equitable situation. In the spirit of equity from the start, this talk highlights how diversity not only is critical to equity, but is also the answer to many of the manager's dilemmas. Specifically, any group that works with infants and toddlers of underserved populations should always actively seek ways to encourage diversity and educate the team about equity. One of Kentucky's largest Head Start programs that I have the privilege of serving in can be an excellent example to help illustrate the points presented for this conference. And let me be clear in saying I am no expert. I humbly approach each day with the awareness that there's a good chance I'm going to run into something I don't immediately know how to handle. However, as a manager, it is my duty that I take those situations seriously to improve my team and work towards the organization's mission. It might help if I give some context before I dive into what I say. I've been working in the mental health field since 2018, so going on about 6 years. I've served in leadership since 2020 and have branched from the outpatient ABA therapy that I was working in to a Head Start program, a very large one, in fact, that spans 13 counties in Kentucky and serves over 1,800 kids and their families. I have the privilege of leading the disability and mental health team that oversees the related compliance and therapies for the entire program. The makeup of my team has shifted over the past few years, but we've had to grapple with internal and external barriers of ageism, subtext of racism, building trust with staff and families, and balancing our abilities with the immense needs of kids we serve. Throughout all of that, we continue to grow and learn, but not without some learning curves. But I do believe that I've found during some self-reflection, a few tips that build equity throughout all components of our work. Because like I said, though they may not be new for everyone, part of what I've learned in my time as manager is that genuinely wanting to learn and relearn strategies to hone our skills benefits everyone. There is no difference in promoting equity in the teams we lead. Remember, promoting equity is an ongoing commitment, and it requires leadership, consistency, and continuous efforts to create a fair and inclusive work environment for all team members. So as leaders, we are not able to effectively manage our teams or groups if we do not allow room for ourselves to improve and grow. What do I mean? Do self-reflection, accept feedback, and be intentional in experiencing different thoughts, ideas, and cultures. I was in the Boy Scouts, and I remember something that my scout leader said to me to this day. And what he told me was, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much room. And what he meant is that staying comfortable does not allow any expansion of thought or action, because nearing the edge provides such a bigger view of what's possible and lies ahead. And it's okay to be uncomfortable, even though it's uncomfortable to be uncomfortable. I've had many uncomfortable discussions, from religions to cultural to domestic issues, to even discussing parenting styles that conflict with what we have. Families ultimately lead to a greater understanding of their kids' development and ultimately success in our programs when we have these discussions with them. Expanding our understanding of the world and encouraging our teams to do the same benefits the families we serve and provides targeted interventions that are more effective than just those broad-based strategies that we hope work when we throw them and hope they stick to the wall. We need to also make sure we invest in ongoing training and development opportunities for your team members. Make sure those programs are available to everyone and address the specific needs and barriers faced by underrepresented groups. Regardless of your budget for TNTA, there should be an effort to provide some sort of something for your team, especially if your team is responsible for clinical services or training other staff. If nothing else, get some books that are recent and pertain to areas of development that you've identified with your team. Even though I have a decent sized budget where I'm able to pay for professional development, I make it a point to build up a library of literature to keep at my desk for those who want specific readings. I have a range of novels, textbooks, popular children's books, and research journals to accommodate a wide range of training breadth. It's not as hard either to get academic work as many people think. That's why I love professional conferences like this and poster presentations and any sort of gathering, because network is a real tool that can be used in this realm. A lot of university professors or researchers that attend these gatherings regularly publish works. They often get extra copies of the journals or have access to these free copies. And so I ask around and see if anybody would be willing to mail those things to me when they're done with it. It's a win-win because I increase my academic library and then the author gets further distribution of their work. All this to say, being intentional in building the professional capacities of your team will show in their work, interpersonal outcomes, and increase their confidence in their roles. In the same vein of thought, I appreciate the idea to create mentorship and sponsorship programs that offer support and guidance to employees, especially those from underrepresented groups. Encourage your senior team members to serve as mentors and sponsors for junior employees. These programs can help employees from all backgrounds advance their careers. No one likes to be hired and then tossed into the sea on the first day saying, "Good luck to you, hope you survive." This is not a new revelation by any means, but the role it plays in growing equity is often understated and overlooked. Pairing up different coworkers in these models serves a few purposes. One, it most obviously helps to ensure the transmission of important work information to help the employee succeed. Two, it serves as an opportunity to create a situation for others to experience diverse thoughts and cultures, leaning back into what we talked about earlier. Three, this model can definitely create an opportunity in a healthy work environment to serve as a two-way street and allow effective communication that flows both ways. Something that can be so destructive to an organization's work is falling into this routine of, well, we've always done it this way. Accepting feedback facilitates critical thinking and innovative solutions, and doesn't mean that every thought's a winner, but it creates a space for that possibility. Moving on, make sure you implement flexible work policies that accommodate the diverse needs of your team members. Recognize that individuals may have different family responsibilities, health concerns, or other personal factors that affect their life-work balance. Providing flexibility in these work hours, remote work options, and other benefits support equity, and here's why. All these things contribute to a healthy, functioning team dynamic. And if your staff feel supported, they'll likely most support you too. So more importantly, people who feel secure and safe are more open and have more dialogue. They are more engaging and authentic with customers, families, kids, and therefore improve outcomes. I'm thinking of one team member that was in school and they were stressing so bad about an upcoming project. So I worked with them to allow some time to leave early for a week or so to make sure that project was completed and to help decrease their stress level. It turns out that project got an A+ and actually served as the foundation for a future training in our organization that has been incredibly well received and very helpful. And so even if you run into some inflexible policies or situations you can't accommodate, it's important to make sure you retain integrity and create boundaries. But the key is mutual respect through being flexible where you can. This strategy is all about the long game of building people open to improving equity. And I think as a manager, modeling inclusive behavior and communication is so important. Encourage open and honest dialogue about diversity and inclusion, and create a safe space for team members to share their experiences and concerns. Listen actively and be open to feedback so that you can encourage open and honest communication within your team. Act on the feedback you receive and make necessary changes that promote equity. It is incredibly helpful if the team you have shares the same passion you do for the work being done. But if they're burning out or maybe aren't as enthusiastic about the work as you are, modeling the behavior you want at least shows them you care enough to show the correct way of still getting the job done. I'm thinking of an individual who was very burnt out and aggravated at the organization as a whole. And this all took place not long after I started a particular manager position. I didn't handle the situation well, and the communication between me and this employee was insincere and scarce. There was no inclusive language or thought to bring them into the room to find a solution. So I modeled a way that encouraged isolation and interpersonal communication that was not genuine or respectful, because I wasn't sure of my role in the situation and I was pushing it off on others. Ultimately, this individual left the organization, but not before causing some significant damage to the team's trust in one another and some of the families we serve and their faith in our ability to advocate and serve their kids. I've learned from that situation, though, and have avoided more incidents and actually found that the information learned during these similar conflicts are actually improving and furthering our team's work. So how does all of this play into equity and Head Start, and more specifically, the program I lead my team in to improve mental health access and increase inclusivity for all the kids we see? I think this is most apparent in the wide range of populations that we serve. Our program is found across 13 counties in central and southern Kentucky. Lexington is the second most populous county in the state, with over 320,000 people living here. But we also serve Nicholas County, one of the least populated counties in the state, with barely 7,000 people counting in that census. Our approaches to this large difference in communities are different, but awareness of disparities and the need for equity are a common thread in all that we do. Equity means that all families and children, whether you live in a crowded, minority-dominated neighborhood or an isolated farm with dozens of acres between you and the next house, all these families and children are uniquely understood and cared for using a comprehensive and multi-generational approach to promote opportunities for healthier and more functional living that meet the needs of those families and individuals. Particularly, our rural areas can be more difficult to provide equitable access to and resources, especially when it comes to IECMH programs in these communities. Perhaps the most valuable tool in these situations are the partnerships and the connections that are made in these areas long before my team begins to provide any direct services. Collaborating with established and known entities or peoples in these counties and country communities proved to be so helpful in building trust and laying the groundwork for increasing resources available to people living there. These partnerships are so helpful in completing needs assessments that highlight targeted needs that should be addressed according to the community because we may think differently than they do. I always like to apply the principle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. My team is all about providing referrals to appropriate early interventionists and increasing social emotional competence in our youngest kids. But if the community is experiencing a food desert or widespread loss of jobs, the strategies that we use are not going to be helpful until basic needs are met first, regardless if there's apparent mental health concerns present. Rural partners are critical in identifying these needs so that effective work can begin to address them so further mental health care can occur in the future. And working towards an equitable access to mental health care in rural areas, I remind myself and my team and others to prepare for resistance but expect progress. I say this because in such tight-knit communities, there can be a real hesitancy to changes in the status quo. And I say this from experience growing up in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee. This isn't always the case, but be prepared so that we minimize any distractions or setbacks that prevent resources and mental health care from improving in these areas. So you prepare for resistance, but you always expect progress. And the key here is finding out what determines progress for that community. And that's going to look different from place to place, but it's a major part in improving equitable outcomes for different areas and populations. And there's an important topic that I want to tie this thought together with and begin wrapping up, and that's this practice of cultural humility. Cultural humility is a concept and practice that emphasizes a lifelong commitment to self-awareness and self-reflection and a willingness to learn from and engage with people from different cultures and backgrounds. And you maximize the efficacy of your work and practice when you combine that with cultural competence. And here's the difference between the two. Competence suggests a finite limit to learning about a culture and is usually associated with book smarts and research, while cultural humility, as suggested a second ago, implies that there is always a different way to learn or experience a culture that improves your interactions with these populations. So while my team may be incredibly skilled in working with both urban and rural populations, we must be intentional in balancing our competence with humility in a way that builds trust and collaboration with the families that we serve. This point alone can be its own presentation, but for time's sake, I want to at least include it in what I'm sharing with you. Competence is knowing about person-first language. It's about knowing body language and lingo and different cultures or communities, but humility is being teachable and expanding your understanding of those things while interacting with those families you're serving. And I want to end with this thought that no matter your age, race, gender, sex, socioeconomic status, or any other identifying label that you carry with you, we are all responsible for improving equitable access and service to those that we serve in the IECMH field. There's literature stating that the first 5 years of a child's life is the period of the most rapid growth where 90% of the brain is developed. For those of us working with these kids and babies, what an incredible honor and huge responsibility we have to provide the highest quality services during one of the most important times in these kids' lives. So why would we not want to improve our skills and ensure that every kid, regardless of where they are from or got going on in their lives, has equitable access to mental health and developmental intervention to make sure that they get the best shot at success in life that they can have? And so for that, I want to say thank you for listening to me, and thank you for all that you do for our nation's infants and toddlers.